there is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution.
There actually isn't a whole lot I knew about Jaws before today. I knew the typical things that are just inherently attached to its name, of course. Jaws is a cult classic. Obviously, it's been well loved and enjoyed by a significant amount of people for years. It's considered by many to be one of the greatest films ever made. It's pretty old, and it was made in a time when making a movie with a giant shark featured in it was considered way too expensive and difficult to shoot. Now, I've loved movies ever since I was a little kid. I can remember watching the making of documentaries of Indiana Jones and Star Wars as a 7-year-old and being mesmerized by the process and work that went into making such imaginative motion pictures. In my early teens, I probably watched a dozen or so films with no sound just to study their cinematography and editing without the distraction of sound. I mean, I am a film nerd, absolutely 100%. But today I watched Jaws for the first time in my entire life. Now, I know that pretty much discredits everything I just said, and I get that. I fully agree with you, actually. How can someone who is that passionate about movies never watch Jaws? That's like the first movie everyone watches. I'm pretty sure they play it in every delivery room, so when you're born, the doctor can say, "Yep, this one's seen Jaws. He's not going to grow up to be an uncultured weirdo." Then they put on your birth certificate, "Seen Jaws," so you can, I don't know, get a job later in life. But they didn't do that for me. Why? I don't know. Now, how have I neglected to see the movie responsible for making everyone afraid of sharks? Listen, I don't know what to tell you. I just never saw it. So, I went to Target and bought Jaws on Blu-ray for $10 so I could get my feet wet in that beautiful shark-infested wave pool of a movie. Then I took it home, opened that brand new case, took out that fresh copy of Steven Spielberg goodness, and carefully put it into the trash, because suddenly it's on Netflix now. Oh well. First things first, Jaws is beautiful on many levels. It's gorgeous aesthetically in regards to its cinematography and effects by even today's standards, but also has that beautiful 1970s feel to the camera work and the image. I love the grainy picture, and I love the way old lenses play with the light. It's worth mentioning that to me, pre-digital films look really good after an HD remastering. The same can be said about Star Wars and The Sound of Music on Blu-ray. Ugh, I love it. Anyway, yeah, Jaws is a really good looking movie, especially today. Putting aside the high definition makeover, Jaws has beautiful camera work done by director of photography Bill Butler. He did an amazing job using the camera to tighten suspense throughout the film. As an audience, we saw everything we needed to at just the right times, no sooner and no later, which mostly had to do with Steven Spielberg's philosophy being the less shark we see, the more terrifying the shark will be. I think Bill Butler really worked with Spielberg on that. This helped the idea of there being a shark terrorizing the beach very convincing, but kept me in suspense and guessing during the first and second acts. My favorite example of Bill Butler's work on Jaws is this shot right here. I love that shot for a lot of reasons. It looks awesome, it's scary, and it's effective. It was one of the first moments in the film when we actually saw the shark, and I just love how they didn't make a big deal about it. The shark is underwater, so all we see is a big blob that kind of looks like a shark just slowly move in towards our poor unsuspecting victim here and subtly pull him underwater. Then we don't see it again for a long time. I love the way they did that. It's executed wonderfully, and it also makes solid use of a fake shark without showing it too much, letting us know how fake it is. I think that's very smart. This probably goes down as one of my favorite movie moments ever. To me, one of the most beautiful aspects of Jaws is how it was made. While I was researching this film, I found that not only is Jaws a landmark in cinematic history, but it's also one of the most grueling productions of its time. The cast and crew truly had a torturous time making this film. They were seasick, tired, dealing with prop malfunctions on a minute-to-minute basis, and on top of that, they didn't even know if the film was going to be a success. For me, what makes some movies so special are the stories they tell of how they were made. Jaws is truly interesting when you look into the production. I highly recommend watching the making of documentary if you're interested. It's really cool. I love the mentality of Jaws. I love the believability over realism mentality Steven Spielberg brought to the film. I heard that during the production of Jaws, the prop design team brought a perfectly realistic prop of a severed arm to Spielberg. But to Spielberg, the arm looked fake, and his prop designer explained, well, this is how the arm would actually look after being in the sun all day. but Spielberg said something to the effect of, well, someone who really understands human anatomy might look at that and really appreciate the realism. But as a member of the audience, I might look at that and think it looks fake. It's better for it to be believable rather than realistic. I think that's awesome. I love the emphasis he puts on the difference between the two, and I think more filmmakers should focus more on that. Now, before I move on, I have to mention, I believe Jaws is one of the greats. It's a spectacular film, and it was made by people who really cared about it and wanted it to be special. That's why it's so great. That's why any movie is as great as Jaws is. The cast and crew gave it what it needed. That will forever be something I deeply appreciate about Jaws. Now, is Jaws perfect? Absolutely not. It has its problems, and I'm not going to sit here and talk only about how fantastic a movie is just because it's a classic. After watching this film for the first time, I have to say I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. Firstly, I don't think the characters are all that interesting at all. They aren't bad, but they just aren't anything special to me. Do I have a clear reason to feel this way? Not really. I would have liked a bit more adversary for Chief Brody. Not just that the well-being of the beachgoers are his responsibility. That's good, but something a bit more personal than that. And his son encountering the shark and going into a shock just wasn't enough for me. Maybe I'm just being super picky, and, well, I definitely am. But I really did struggle to care a lot about Martin Brody. I also really hated Mayor Vaughn's character. I think he was greedy to a very unrealistic extent. I don't feel like any mayor would keep the beach open after several deaths because of shark attacks. It would be extremely detrimental to his public image, and it wouldn't be worth the supposed amount of money to keep it open. I believe the film was trying to make it seem like Mayor Vaughn was simply choosing money over the safety of the people, when in reality it effectively just makes him look like a complete moron for not contemplating the personal consequences. If he was truly as selfish and as greedy as the movie makes him out to be, he definitely would have thought, gee, I shouldn't keep this beach open because if I do, I'm going to look like a total piece of garbage and lose my job. But the story just completely ousts this scenario as a possibility, which to me feels lazy. A lot of people will argue that the characters don't really matter so much because the shark is supposed to be the most interesting character. That's fine. I like to give the benefit of the doubt and believe that's what the writer's intent was through the whole thing. If so, they did a great job. Still, since this is my video about my first impression of Jaws, I think it's worth mentioning that I didn't love the characters so much. My biggest issue with Jaws, surprisingly, was the pacing. Throughout the first and second acts, the pacing is really, really good. The story keeps itself moving, things are happening, I'm staying interested. Then, the lengthy third act comes along. The part of the film when they actually set out to catch the shark. A lot of people love this portion of the movie. I didn't. I thought it was very overdone and drawn out. The event of them actually trying to catch the shark felt very tedious for me. I eventually felt like the film was never going to end and I would be watching it forever. That is never a good thing. I found myself begging the shark to jump into the boat willingly and allow our protagonist to kill it so the movie could end. I know I'm being overly dramatic and it's really not that terrible, but I don't think this is excusable for a movie like Jaws, which is deemed perfect by so many people. Maybe I just have a short attention span, which is honestly a very good possibility. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe if I watch it a second time, I'd find enjoyment in a long, drawn-out third act, but for my first time watching it, I thought it was really boring. I don't want to make it sound like I hated the movie. I liked it. It's just not something I loved. There are things that stood out to me in negative ways, and I had to mention them in this video. It's possible that I exaggerated the flaws a bit, and it's also possible that I'm just an idiot and I'm saying things for absolutely no reason. Obviously, there's a lot of movies I dislike way more than Jaws, and although I didn't completely fall in love with the film, I appreciate it and respect it a great deal. There's so much good about it, and it's such an important part of history. I might watch it a second time just to understand it a bit better. Also, if you disagree with me, I'd be happy to hash it out down in the comments. If you know something about Jaws that I don't, or I said something that wasn't accurate, let me know. I'd love to learn more.